Okay, great. Thank you everyone who is talking in the chat and still sending in messages. At this time, I want to welcome you to the College Orientation Summer Series webinar. My name is Stephanie Mardall, and I'm currently the graduate intern for the summer for College Programming and Orientation, CPO, and I'll be serving as a moderator for this webinar today. Today's panel is the Physical Sciences panel. The Physical Sciences Collegiate Division, PSCD, is where two major areas of intellectual exploration, physical and mathematical sciences, come together to help students better understand the physical world from multiple perspectives. Hear from current physical science majors and minors about their academic journeys and experience within the Physical Science Collegiate Division. A quick overview of our agenda for today. So joining us today are several current students and UCMP peer mentors who are here to share about their own academic journey. We will have the panelists introduce themselves first, and then we'll move into a Q&A portion. We've already collected a variety of questions from the registration forms, which we will first start with. If you have any additional questions, feel free to add those via the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Please note that you are able to see which questions have already been provided and even event upvote questions that you are also interested in. So we'll go ahead and jump into panelist introductions. We'll go ahead and start with you, Alexa.
Hello, I'm Alexa. I'm a math and computer science major. In terms of like RSOs, I'm involved in some women in science RSOs and also active minds. I was also a TA over the past year. With career interests, I'm not sure yet what I'm gonna do, but I'm considering maybe getting a PhD in math. Also considering joining the tech industry. A little bit about my academic journey. I started off thinking I maybe wanted to be a math major. Wasn't totally sure. I took this class, honors calculus, the IBL version. I absolutely loved it. So that convinced me to be a math major, basically. The CS major, I'm not quite as passionate about computer science, but I'm still considering a career in computer science, so I wanted to do that also, and I do enjoy it, especially the theory, because it's similar to math. So I took honors calculus my first year, then I TA'd that course my second year, and now I'm a step intern with Google to see if I want to do that after college. Still not sure, but yeah, I have 2 years left to figure it out. Oh, I'm also a rising third year. I didn't say that.
Great, thank you, Alexa. Anjali?
Hi, everyone. My name is Anjali. I'm a rising third year, and I am a chemistry major, also on the pre-med track. So a little bit about me, I guess, is I'm involved in several RSOs. I'm involved in our benzene, our chemistry RSO. I'm also involved in spiritual life on campus, and I'm also involved in like a couple recreational clubs like chess club. In terms of like my academic journey, I would say I came in as a bio major pre-med, and then I quickly switched to chem after my first quarter because I love Gen Chem. You don't really hear that often, but I did. And it was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that I made the switch, and I am currently interested in research, so pursuing like an MD PhD. I'm interested in like translational work. So right now on campus, I'm involved in research, and I'm doing kind of organic chemistry and biochemistry research in a lab in the School of Molecular Engineering. So I absolutely love that, and I can kind of discuss with you guys a little bit about getting involved in research, how to find mentors, and a little bit about, if any of you guys are physical science pre-meds, about kind of how that process has been. So I think like overall, I kind of changed a lot since I came in, but with all of the classes and advising, and especially panels like this, it's pretty easy to get a lot of perspectives on the different routes. So yeah.
Thank you. Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm a rising fourth year. I am a astrophysics and physics double major. I am involved with the Society of Women in Physics on campus. I am a tutor for the introductory physics sequences. And outside of academics, I'm heavily involved with being a SCAV judge. I've been doing on-campus and both on-campus and off-campus astrophysics research for multiple years now. About 2 years ago, I got a Metcalf to do work with a professor at Hiroshima University, and now I've been spending 2 years working on artificial intelligence and astrophysics research with a professor on campus. And after college, I'm intending to go to grad school for data science and astronomy. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Haley.
Hey, I'm Haley. I am a rising second year computer science major, considering a minor in creative writing. And yeah, so on campus, I'm currently involved in Society of Women in Engineering and OSTEM, and more recreationally, women's rugby. And I'm involved in research, both on a machine learning project in the social science department and the cybersecurity group on campus called Supergroup. It's really fun, and the professor is such a great mentor who oversees it. So if you're interested at all in cybersecurity, I recommend you check it out. Yeah, and so I'm doing research over the summer, and after graduation, I hope to probably go either into the cybersecurity track. So I'm planning on specializing in cybersecurity, or either software engineering. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So now that you all have an idea of who our panelists are, we're going to move into the Q&A portion. So as a reminder, these are all current students assisting with the panel today who will be sharing about their own personal experiences. So please note if you have any specific questions about sequences, placement tests, or anything specific to you, we encourage you to reach out to your assigned academic advisor who can best support you. Our goal today is for you to hear from these current students about their academic journey. So if everybody's set, we are just going to jump straight into some questions. Our first question is, how did you work with your academic advisor to coordinate your academic plan and plan out courses? Do you have any tips or advice for working with your academic advisor?
I can start. It's for being a physics astro major, it's pretty easy for us, at least for our first year, because we just have one introductory sequence that we're recommended to take, and then nothing beyond that besides any electives you might want to take. So for me, it was very easy just to come to my academic advisor, tell them what I was majoring in, and they would pretty much give me a recommendation for at least, 3 of the 4 classes that that I was required to take. So it was a very simple process for me. I think the biggest thing for me was being honest with my academic advisor about what kind of workload I wanted to undergo during my first year, since it's your first quarter is a bit of a transitionary process, about kind of like the amount of time I wanted to devote to my classes my first quarter, and making sure I didn't take anything that was too high work level or too low work level, just trying to kind of balance all of that.
I can also go. There is this like awesome feature you guys are going to get access to on My Chicago called My Planner. It is like the single best feature ever. And basically what this lets you do is plan all of your classes year by year, quarter by quarter. And what it will do is it will say, did you get all of your major requirements? Did you finish all of your core credits? Did you get all of your electives? Basically, it gives you a lot of autonomy, and your advisor is kind of there to help guide you to make sure you're getting those requirements. But I really used My Planner a lot, and I still use it to plan electives and major classes, because it lets you really like visualize, here's what every quarter of every year is going to look like. And I will say, I think U Chicago has a really awesome college catalog. Everything is very clear. It says, here are the courses you need, here are the prerequisites, and kind of working with your advisor, they will reference this catalog and you'll be able to make a plan. I think that the biggest thing, like advice that I would have, is when you first meet with your advisor, you don't have to have anything solid. You could just say, I'm interested in these majors, and they can say, okay, here are the things that you may need to take or do to make sure that, you know, you're not behind when you kind of decide what major you want. So if you are interested in something other than a physical science or interested in multiple physical sciences, just make sure to tell your advisor that, so then you're not missing any prerequisites.
Great. Thank you, Kat and Anjali. That was very helpful as far as resources for students. Does anybody else have any resources that help them plan, organize their classes?
Yeah, echoing what Anjali said, my planner is super helpful. Also, the computer science department at Chicago has a website where they actually upload their classes for the whole year before even the catalog goes live. And so I find that super helpful, and I can put the link in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Haley. That is very helpful. Our next question is, how have your plans changed or ebbed and flowed over the years? If any at all. If not, oh, go ahead, Kat.
I can start again if nobody else wants to jump in. I started as an Astro major and then kind of shopped around for a second major for a couple of years. I ended up looking at computer science, data science, and eventually settled on the physics major. So the nice part for me was I essentially kind of got to be able to take a lot of classes I was interested in a lot of different majors to see, you know, what I liked, what I didn't like. And it was really great, at least for the physics major, that you're required to take a large number of electives, which are cross-listed with a lot of the other majors. So like as an astrophysics major, I could take straight physics classes that if I ended up not wanting to do the physics major, I could just count them as electives for the astro major, which gave me a lot of flexibility. Yeah, that's very particularly true for astrophysics, physics, CS, data science. All of those classes tend to be have a lot of overlap with each other, which makes it very easy to add a major like relatively late in your career without having to plan for it if you are still undecided.
Great, thank you, Kat. So some of you already touched on some really helpful resources that you use to organize your classes, but how do you choose your classes and how do you know how many classes to take and in what order?
Yeah, so the catalog, as we mentioned before, they have a listing for each major that includes like all the requirements you need and available electives. And so this was really helpful. For comp sci, there's just an intro sequence, and I think for a lot of other physical science majors that everyone has to take, and it kind of gives you a taste of whether you like it or not and whether you might think it might be for you. Past like just intro courses, I found it super helpful talking to students who have been in the major for a while and getting their input, like what professors would they recommend, what classes do they think that you really should just take like this class for your major and a bunch of like less heavy workload classes along with it, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll add one thing in. So as you guys know, since it's a quarter system school, you take 3 to 4 classes per quarter, but you technically can take 5, but you're not going to be allowed to do that as a first year anyways. And now due to COVID, they've kind of rethought the whole 5 class thing. So basically you'll be taking 3 to 4. And one thing I'll say is do not be afraid to take 3 classes. There's absolutely no harm in taking 3 classes. I took 3 classes all throughout my second year, and I took 3 classes my first quarter. It was the best thing I ever did because I was able to really focus on that transition to college in my first year. And in my second year, as I began to take more like major specific classes, I realized like I wanted to focus more of my time and energy on those, and then also like research. So one thing I'll definitely say is, again, don't be afraid to take 3 classes. You definitely can take 4, but there's also nothing wrong with taking 3 if you're say like, hey, I want a lighter quarter, or hey, this class sounds like something I need to put more effort into, so I'm going to focus on that. So you'll still graduate, it'll still be fine. So yeah, sometimes I think that there is a little pressure to take 4, but again, you don't have to.
Great.
Just to,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Alexa.
Okay. Yeah, just to add on to that about the number of classes, like I do think if you're taking like an honors class, especially, it would be good to consider taking 3 classes. Yeah, I was in a sequence that's like known for being like notoriously difficult during my second year, and I took 3 classes during 2 of the quarters, and then not for the second quarter, but I think I should have for the second quarter. Probably would have been better if I did. So yeah, I guess one thing is just to kind of, if you feel like you have an easier load, it may be good to take 4 classes. If you like know later things will be harder, just because you do need to take 4 classes, like half of your quarters or something. Yeah.
Great. Thank you everyone for your inputs. What is the best or most common classes to take as a first year?
So that kind of depends on your major. Obviously, everyone's taking Hume. And then the rest, a lot of people take math, most people do. And then there's usually an intro sequence of some kind if you want to dive right into your major. For physical sciences, I took a Soc my first year, which I don't know if I'd recommend that because it's a lot of reading to take with Hume at the same time. Yeah.
People often also take physical sciences during their first year. Like I took the 130s physics sequence. A lot of people also take Gen Chem. And then, yeah, like Haley said, a lot of people take math their first year. For math majors, that's often the honors calculus sequence, which comes in like the lecture version and an IBL version.
I'd also add, I took a language sequence my first year, which helped me from ending up taking too many heavy math-based and problem set-based classes my first year to kind of balance out my schedule.
Just quickly add, I'm pre-med, but I actually chose to finish my entire core first year. So I did that. Plus the summer, I took Soc over the summer, but I finished all my other core requirements first year and started my pre-med requirements second year. So like, I thought that was okay. Like usually Civ third and fourth years take, like, not to say that you probably can't take it, but just also know that like priority for Civ is usually given to third and fourth years. But I thought like, there's a lot of different approaches that you can take your first year, but if you could consider maybe knocking out some of like your Hume or your art, that would probably really help you down the road. Like you need your Hume, but you can take like 3 Hume in the total of like the 6 core. So yeah.
Great. Thank you everyone for your inputs. So for this next question, just want to give the panelists a little bit of background. The Hume class pre-registration took place in June, so students should already have received that placement this week. And all incoming students are required to meet with your academic advisor the summer before the second round of pre-registration in August. And for the students, CAAO will host a pre-registration webinar on August 4th for further instructions and tips about registering for classes. But the question is, what is class registration / pre-registration process like?
I can take this one. So on My U Chicago, once pre-registration opens, you'll, and the days before, you'll be able to look at classes in different sections you want beforehand. And I highly recommend doing so. Pre-registration usually opens at 9 a.m. on a Monday, but you'll have all week, and it does not matter when in that week you pre-register for classes. It does not affect what classes you get. I know for core classes, I think the priority for who gets them is second, first, fourth, third, but I might be wrong about that for the order in which they're considered. And yeah, so you just you rank the courses you want in order, and then in a couple weeks you'll get your schedule. It may or may not be a full schedule, and if so, then you have add drop to make amendments and try and buy for classes you wanted but you didn't get.
I'm not sure if this is the same this year, but I think, like, at least when I was a first year, pre-registration looked different during the first quarter than every other quarter. Usually we have like 10 spots to rank, but I think when I was a first year, there was like a different like category for like every part of the core, and then you would rank those categories, and then within the categories you would like choose like different sections of courses that you would want.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, if you're undecided, how can you use the core to best figure it out?
Yeah, I can go. I think this kind of sounds like a little cheesy, but I think just going into every class with an open mind is like was like a really big thing for me. Like personally, I was not excited to take general chemistry. Like, I mean, I know it was part of my major and like I didn't really want to do it. But when I got in there, I was just like, you know what, I have to take this for a whole year. Let's just go in. And I loved it. And I switched to chem. And I think like the other thing too is like with my core classes, like there were a lot of them that I loved, and I really, I loved my Hume. But I realized like, I don't think I could see myself doing this kind of work for 4 years. And so I think that kind of going into all of your core classes, or even like the core sequences for your major, like your intended major as of now, like with an open mind and asking yourself, like, can I see myself doing this kind of work for 4 years? But also remembering that, like, things will get a little more difficult, but also more like specialized. Like, I think that can really help. And just, not writing off a class before you've taken it.
Great, thank you. I'm sure that was very helpful. What advice do you have for first years regarding core course selection?
So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but when my biggest recommendation is to consider what type of work you're interested in doing. This goes for choosing what kind of SOC to, which parts of the core you want to finish early. But if you, especially being a physical sciences major, understanding that understanding what type of work is more exhausting for you, you want to be able to space that out well. So just kind of having an understanding going into your classes, if you want to take a class, if you want to start balancing some math heavy classes with some reading heavy classes, or so you don't accidentally take a bunch of reading classes if that's something that is a little bit more challenging for you. And my other recommendation, I don't think anyone has mentioned this already, is reading course evaluation. Because if you read the course evaluations, which will be on the pre-registration page, you can read them specifically about individual professors, which can give you an understanding of what a workload for a class might look like and what the professor's teaching style is. So you can choose core classes that match up well with your learning style. So those are my big recommendations for choosing what part of the core would be good.
Great, thank you. And are any of our panelists double majors or major and/or minors? Great. Kat, so this question's for you, and Alexa, if you are too. If you're a double major minor, can one class count towards both? And how hard is it to do a double major?
So for my experience, my double major is actually very, very easy because I'm a astrophysics major and a physics major. So the overlap is very big. And so you will have classes that are cross-listed for both majors. So the astrophysics major and the physics major both have the exact same introductory sequence, which is part of the reason why the double major is relatively easy, at least like course load wise, because there's just so much overlap between them. It does end up meaning that you end up taking a lot of STEM classes at once, but it's and you have a little bit less room to play around with electives. But yeah, the astrophysics physics double major is not extraordinarily hard to pull off. I think that the double major challenge starts becoming a lot harder once you start branching. The more you branch off from your major, the less overlap that the classes have. So part of the reason that I decided to do a physics double major rather than a computer science double major was that computer science and astrophysics had entirely separate introductory sequences and did not have a lot of overlap. So I would have had to take a lot more additional classes in order to complete the computer science major. It would have been possible if I had started planning it from day one, but because I was considering adding a major so late into the university, it didn't make sense for me to start taking introductory sequences my third year. I guess kind of essentially, if you're considering doing double majors that are very distinct from each other, you're going to want to talk to your career advisor earlier about that and try to make sure that you're getting all of your introductory sequences within your first 2 years and making sure you're planning for that. But if you're considering a double major that has a large amount of overlap and departments that are very flexible with the majors, then you might be able to kind of start adding that in later on. Another one that I know that's pretty common with the physics major would be to do molecular engineering double major, or like that with like chemistry. Yeah, so double majors are definitely doable in the physical sciences. It just requires the more separate there, the more planning you need.
Great, thanks, Kat. Alexa, did you have anything to add to that?
Not a ton. I think Kat covered a lot of it. Math and computer science also has a lot of like overlap between the courses. I guess one thing to add is that with minors, I think, I'm not sure if this is always the case, but I think most of the time it is that you can't like double count things across a major and a minor. So if you're considering getting a minor in something, it might not be that much more work to get it as a second major instead. Just something to consider.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how do you get involved with research and how difficult is it to get a research job / opportunity on campus?
I can chime in, especially anyone interested in like bench research or wet lab. One thing I will say is there are more research positions at the school than people to fill them, and you will consistently see emails asking for people to join research labs. So there are a couple ways that you can go about it. So you can cold email professors. So that's exactly what I did, and I can talk a little more about it. There are several list hosts, so get on all of the career advancement list hosts, and then also join RSOs for your respective majors because they will send out opportunities. So career advancement will have list hosts for like basically each major / field of study. For research opportunities, a lot of those can be funded by Metcalf scholarships. And then there's also a variety of summer programs available. So like, I'm personally not really in chemistry research, but I kind of am. So like, I didn't find mine through chemistry, but like I worked like in a program for the summer. That's how I'm getting funded. So you can apply to a lot of like university specific summer programs to set you up with a lab. I started in my lab. My first year, this fall, end of fall quarter of my first year, I started in my lab, and I cold emailed several professors that I was like interested in their lab, and I didn't hear back from basically any of them. So then I just sent a follow-up email, which is, totally fine. You should always just send a follow-up email and say, hey, I'm still interested. And then I actually heard back from 2 of them. And then I interviewed with them. And then I eventually found a lab that I really liked. So definitely don't be afraid to cold email, and definitely don't be afraid to reach out to career advancement, and look on Handshake, which is the job portal that you'll get access to if you don't really know a lot about it, because there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of them are also funded. So it seems really daunting and scary to find one, but you'll be surprised how easily you'll find one.
And a quick reminder for our students, our next newsletter is coming out on Monday, where we will talk about career advancement and Handshake a little bit in more detail and how to use those resources. So keep that in mind and keep an eye out for that email. Thank you, Anjali, for mentioning that.
Oh, I can also drop this link in the chat, but if you were a physics major or physics adjacent major, the Society of Women in Physics actually put a guide to this up on our website. So we have a whole page that is a bunch of us wrote an article on how to cold email a professor, and then we also compiled a list of potential opportunities that work for first years. So I can drop that link, but I think it's a really good resource just for if you're a physics adjacent major and interested in starting research.
Great, thank you. And since both of you mentioned cold emailing, talking to professors, wanted to ask a question about how important is it to build relationships with your professors, and how do you do that?
I can start. I think it's very important to build relationships with professors, and also just nice. I guess it's important for recommendations you might need in the future, but it's also just makes your experience better. I had a really close relationship with my calc professor first year, and I still taught her, and I TA'd for her the second year. And I think it just makes things a lot better to have someone you can talk to about things in your major, and just talk about things for the future, especially if you're considering academia. And how to do that, I guess number one tip would probably be to go to office hours. I've never had a bad experience in office hours. Professors are very willing to ask questions, and it doesn't have to just be questions about the material. They're usually happy to answer questions about their experience, anything. I think office hours are underutilized. I think everyone should go. You don't need to have questions about the material.
Great, thanks, Alexa. Our next question is, could you describe the balance between academics, clubs, and social life? How much time do you typically spend for each of these categories?
Honestly, it really depends on what classes you're taking, but I found the balance is a lot more even than I think people might expect it to be. One thing I found is that you do have a lot more free time in college than you do in high school, where you're probably scheduled back-to-back activities, sports, classes, homework, preparing for standardized testing. So you have a lot more free time, but you have more, not necessarily more work, just work that takes more time. And so it's making sure you can schedule yourself well. But even after work, I found I have a lot more free time than I thought I would going in. That being said, making sure you're keeping up with everything, and that if you feel you're not spending enough time on one of these categories, maybe work on rebalancing things, because the last thing you want to do is start losing sleep halfway through the quarter during midterms or something. But I found it was not hard at all to find that balance in my experience.
I'll add to that and just say academics and social life are not mutually exclusive. For me, a lot of my socializing as a first year was just studying with people in study rooms at the reg. I think you'll find that, it's helpful to collaborate on problem sets, and also you'll just probably naturally end up talking about other things and getting closer with people. So you can definitely be friends with people who you also study with.
Great, thank you. And our last pre-registration question is about study abroad. How does study abroad affect your studies and track completion? And disclaimer, you don't have to have any study abroad experience if you know the answer to this.
That kind of depends which study abroad you're looking at. Like Civ, there are quite a few Civ study abroads, and I know that's a really popular option that gets 3/4 of Civ, which are all part of the core. Although you only have to take 2, you do have to take like a 6th in either humanities, arts, or civilizations for a total of 6 classes. And so it can complete that core requirement, as well as you can complete your language sequence or start one, because you need 3/4 worth if you are not already fluent in a language coming in. And there are also direct enrollment programs where you can get, I think, somewhere between 2 to 4 credits, as long as you consult with your advisor beforehand. Yeah, just looking into study abroad, there's a lot of different options you can take to stay on track for your major or even double major.
Great, thank you, Haley. So our first question from the chat is, could you talk a bit about what physical sciences are taken as part of the core for non-STEM majors?
So if I remember correctly, I believe that you need to take, for non-STEM majors, you need to take 2 physical sciences as 2 physical science classes at some point during your time at the university. What this means is you could take a physics class, a chemistry class, an astronomy class. There's like a wide variety of options. I know a lot of people have also taken, if you take a class that is intended for like a prerequisite for a major, but end up deciding not to do that major later on, those will still count for your physical science core, if that makes sense. So I could take a class on, stars or something, which for my physical science core, or I could take, introductory mechanics and introductory E&M for my physical sciences core. So what that means is if you're interested in a physical sciences major, but end up not being interested later on, it's not like that will have a very strong impact on like your ability to schedule classes later on, since they'll count for your core and you'll have needed to take a core class anyways. That's all of what I know. If anyone else wants to jump in.
Great, thanks, Kat. Our next question is, how easy is it to get into desired upper level math classes, given that over 10% of the student body majors in math? Alexa, did you have something to say about this question first?
Yeah, I was typing up an answer, so I guess I'll just read what I typed. So I haven't taken upper level electives yet, so I can't really speak to that, but I haven't heard that it's difficult to get into the courses you want. For upper level sequences like analysis and algebra, they offer like different versions, and generally you can take the version that you want to take. It might not be at the section that you want, but the math department really doesn't want to prevent people from taking things. I guess the exception would maybe that IDL analysis, I think there's only like one section of it, and it's a small class, but for most of the courses, they offer multiple sections like non-electives. So yeah, I haven't heard that it's very difficult, and I haven't had difficulty so far.
Great, thank you. And another question is for each of you, if you all could answer, what drew you to your respective majors?
I personally had a really fun time in Gen Chem. Like, I think one thing is I had a really great experience in Gen Chem. I had like a very encouraging teaching assistant TA, and I also, was around classmates that were also kind of really encouraging, and I really enjoyed it. And overall, I think, like, very, very personally, what fascinated me about it was just the interaction between what you see and what you don't see, and how like certain molecules make what you see like happen. Like why, why can this water bottle be plastic and hold up? It's because of molecules, right? And so I just thought that personally, like what really interested me was these reactions on a small level and how they produce the macroscopic things you see and experience and live in. And so, really kind of getting that perspective, which came from Gen Chem, was a lot of fun. And so, yeah, that's what drew me.
I can jump in. So I always knew I wanted to go to be an astrophysics major. I've been interested in astrophysics research and academia since high school. So I knew that that was kind of the career path I wanted to go towards. And yeah, the astro major ended up turning out to be perfect for me, because I ended up, as I kind of progressed through my career at U Chicago, I started understanding what parts of astrophysics academia are interesting to me. And I ended up becoming a lot more interested in computational astronomy over theoretical astronomy, which was part of the reason I ended up being drawn towards the physics major, because the physics major ended up being able to provide me experience working more with experiments and getting a little bit hands-on experience there, as well as getting a background in like intermediate mechanics and E&M, which are pretty necessary for going into research. So this is not a particularly interesting answer, but those it essentially was like I knew that I wanted to go to grad school, and the majors ended up being the majors ended up kind of providing you the like right set of classes that they need to support you in order to go into a career in that. So yeah.
Okay, I can go next. I kind of talked about this earlier, but for me, what drew me to the math major was definitely the calc sequence I took, 160 IBL. Yeah, I always liked math in high school, but to me, like college math is just like a whole different world. I found proofs that's basically what math is as a math major. It's just like doing a lot of proofs. So I found proofs really enjoyable, and the IBL sequence is really fun because fun for me. It's not everyone's style, which is why they offer a lecture-based version too. But the style of the course is like students giving presentations of math problems, and then kind of like asking questions about it. And yeah, I just think it's really, I like communicating like math also. Like I like teaching, and I like kind of writing up my proofs or typing them in LaTeX. So I think it was a really good course because it wasn't like just solving math. It was also kind of different skills, and it's also very collaborative, just like naturally. So yeah, it was a really fun course. But yeah, hopefully that answers it.
I can also go. So what drew me to computer science was, so actually starting freshman year of high school, I took an intro to comp sci class, and I really liked it. And I continued taking classes throughout high school, and I had teachers that I really enjoyed. And I just sort of saw it as almost problem solving, or like sort of like riddles. And so I really like that aspect of it. Just also, it's something that you have a very tangible, you did it right or you didn't. And it's something that like I really enjoyed that aspect of it, where there's always something that you can keep trying to you can always keep working the problem. Even when you've hit like a barrier, there's so many ways you can still approach it, that you never really feel that stuck.
Great. Thank you everyone for sharing about your experiences. Is there a class that you have loved and would recommend as a must take?
I was actually typing this answer as you asked it, so I'm very excited to talk about this class. I actually did not take this as a physical science class. I took it as my fulfillment of my bio topics requirement, but I believe that it is also cross-listed with I hope it's cross-listed with with physical sciences core. It's definitely like an elective option for a lot of the physical sciences majors. There's a class called Fossils to the Fermi Paradox, which is one of the coolest classes I've ever taken. It runs, I think, spring quarter every other year, and it teaches you, it essentially has a different lecturer every single class that is either from psychology, biology, or astrophysics. And they talk to you about a different aspect of understanding extraterrestrial life. So whether that's, how evolution exists on Earth and how that would change on other planets versus understanding planet formation, exoplanets, and habitability. So it ended up being like the coolest class I've taken for a bio requirement, because I ended up being able to get lecturers, like a ton of astrophysics lecturers, as well as bio lecturers who were talking about a topic that was actually like very relevant to my field. Highly recommend looking out for that. It does not run that frequently, but I really recommend looking out for it. There's just so many different lecturers, and every single one of them is at the top of their field. So it gives you just like, there's just a lot there. It's really cool.
Adding to that, I actually took like a really, really cool class that was, I took a really cool class that was called Women and Girls in Science, and it was a comparative human development elective that I took for fun. And it basically, we analyzed studies and academic literature, all primary sources, to analyze this like idea of the leaky pipeline of women in STEM, like what keeps women out of STEM, what are the contributing factors to women in STEM. And it actually turned out to be like a part undergrad, part grad class, and it was the coolest class I've ever taken. And we really discussed all of the different myths about what keep women in and out of science, and it was just really, really eye-opening, and the professor was just absolutely amazing. And I think it's one of those classes that you never really think would be a class. Like, it's just so cool and specialized, and that's what's so cool about UChicago is there's just like a ton of classes like that. Like my first year, I saw a class that was like about ancient cooking, and I was just like, that's really cool. So you can just find some like crazy topics. So I just recommend browsing the catalog for that quarter, because you never know what you'll find.
Great, thank you. The next question is there a huge difference in rigor, workload, etc., between the regular and honors versions of physical science classes, especially chemistry and calculus?
I can talk about the difference for calculus at least. I'm not sure how, there's probably more work in the honors calculus classes. I think mostly it's just a really different style of class, since the like 150s or 130s sequences are more computational, not as much proofs. I think the 150s has some, but not a ton. And the 160s are almost exclusively proofs. And I think like it does end up being more work, but I can't say for sure. It might depend on the section, because I only took the honor sequence. But I think it's the kind of work you're doing is just different. There's kind of more of a like learning curve at the beginning of the honor sequence, I think, since a lot of people have never done proofs before. And although I think that might exist in the 150s too, because they do some proofs. The honors calculus sequence in particular is kind of like different from other honor sequences in that like it's pretty common to take it. Like I think like most math majors do, because it's just like a better introduction to proofs than like this other option, which is like an intro to proofs class, because it's like 3 quarters long instead of just 1 quarter, but you can do either one. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful, at least with calculus.
I can speak a little to chemistry. Kind of sort of what Alexa said, in the sense that like a lot of chem majors take the honors. That being said, you don't have to. Like I didn't take honors gen chem. Honors orgo in Gen Chem are different. Like honors Gen Chem, you'll find like a lot of people in it. Honors Orgo, I think the regular Orgo class is 250 to 300. I think the honors Orgo, my class is about 7. So it was very small, very one-on-one kind of. But what I found is that typically a lot of people are more so who take the kind of honors chem, like looking for a lot more like enrichment slash, they're interested in research in that area. So, I didn't take honors or go all 3 quarters or anything, but, it's kind of all of what you're interested in. And I think that in terms of rigor, like, in my personal experience, no large STEM class here is like an easy ride, but the best kind of for chemistry advice I ever got from a TA was like, STEM is like a sport. The tests are just of how well you've practiced, and a lot of these things, you just put in a lot of work and like do a lot of practice problems, ask for help, and you'll be fine.
I would just want to jump in really quick because it wasn't necessarily answer the question, but there's also honors computer science and physics. And for the sake of brevity, I'll skip talking about the honors physics, but the Society of Women in Physics is actually going to hold an event at the beginning of the year to help people understand the differences between honors physics and regular like 130 physics. So I recommend keeping an eye out for that because we're going to get all the professors involved and they'll help explain the difference better than I can here.
Great, thank you for that, both of you. And our last question that we're going to take today is, as women in STEM, how do you think being a woman affected your experience while pursuing majors that have been traditionally male dominated?
I can speak a little about this. I think maybe what's most relevant is my experience with honors analysis, which is the course I took second year. I think something I noticed is that the men just like don't doubt themselves as much. I went into the course just like not really sure about taking it. I'd like debated it like for all summer if I should take it or not. And for the first 3 weeks, I was highly considering dropping it. And I talked to most of my friends in the course ended up being men, and I talked to them and I was like, how did you decide to take it? And they were just like, well, I was invited to it, or I was suggested or it was suggested to me or something, and they just like said like, why not? And I'm like, how can you like undergo such a workload like just for such a casual reason? Like, and I think they tended to just think it's like way more like okay to not know things, and or like I think there's like a thing I've heard about like job applications, like if like men will just like not meet that many of the qualifications and still apply, and women will look to meet all of them. So I think like if you're a woman in STEM, like don't be afraid to try things that you are not sure about. You're probably just as qualified as the other people are. Certainly not less qualified than everyone, which some people think. There's a lot of imposter syndrome going on, and it affects men too, but maybe more for women when you're just surrounded by a lot of men.
I want to jump in and second everything you said because that's so very, very true. The biggest thing I can recommend for being a woman in STEM is finding female mentors who are in the program. Either if you're interested in grad school, find a grad school mentor. If you're just in, but find someone in the major, because the most encouraging things that I ever heard as a first and second year physics major came from a fourth year in the department who was telling me things like they had a friend who, barely passed the entirety of the introductory sequence of physics and were really struggling, and then ended up graduating with honors, right? And hearing stories from other people who you seem are incredibly successful in the major, being able to tell you that they also struggled and that, you're not dumber than everyone else in the major. You're not struggling more than everyone else in the major. Everybody is struggling. It's hard. But being able to kind of see people who've kind of come out the other end and can both encourage you and offer you advice just matters so much. So there are pre-made mentorship programs, or just finding someone in your house who's taking the major, just keeping an eye out for that. That was like a huge difference for me that I really recommend.
I quickly also jump in, like, this doesn't even just go for like women, but also like the biggest thing that helped me a lot was, like Kat said, mentors. I second that. And your TAs are amazing mentors. In most cases, your TAs are only 3 to 4 years older than you. They're grad students. They've literally just been through what you've been through. And for most classes, so your 130s, 150s calculus, likely taught by a grad student. You will have grad student TAs for, I don't know about CS, but physics, you have first year grad student TAs. Chemistry, you have first year grad student TAs. They are awesome. I not had a female chemistry professor until my third quarter, second year. But I had female grad students throughout that. And I can't underestimate the impact that had on me. Just like, they are such, your TAs, I can't stress this enough, are such resources. There's people that you should absolutely look up to, absolutely ask for help. They're so nice, and they're really encouraging. And if it weren't for this TA I had first quarter chemistry, who was a grad student, I went to her and I literally cried to her. And I said, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this major. She was like, you know what, when I was in your shoes, I also wasn't, didn't feel like I was good. And she kind of encouraged me, and she's the reason that I switched, and I'm so glad that I did. So just remember that you have people around you that really, really care about you, and reach out to your TAs. They're awesome people.
And just quickly jumping in, adding on, I would also really recommend people also finding mentors, of course, are very important, but also people in your year that will take classes with you, that like you can look, that will be there with you, and people that you're ready to join group projects with, and that you trust to respect your opinion and your input just as much as they would anyone else's. I found that was also really helpful. Even like if you don't know someone going into a class, just reaching out to the other girls in your STEM classes, I promise you they're also looking for someone to talk to. They probably also feel a little lost, and they make great study partners. So
that is very helpful. Thank you, everyone, for sharing that about your experiences. As we wrap up here, thank you to all the panelists who are here today and answered all your questions openly, honestly, and we appreciate you sharing about your experiences. And a big thank you also to our attendees for your time. And as previously mentioned, a copy of the recording will be posted on the communications from the college section of the orientation website. Also sent in the chat, if you have specific questions about a major, visit the UCMP directory and search for peer mentors via major will be extremely helpful. And feel free to look into the chat to see any last minute questions answered. And we appreciate you all being here today, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.